Alright boys, I'm just going to quickly talk about pools that are not in the video because of if you don't have a priest, you'll have to play something like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be this, but you'll have to play some packs which you otherwise wouldn't because of of these fucking cages. So this one here, it's pretty simple. CC the claw fighters when they do the vicious claw mangle. You have one person to get the important kick on Decay Speaker, which is Withering Burst. This other kick is just a thing onto you. And it does a bit of damage, but it's not threatening. It's not particularly threatening. One person will get the Fear on the War Scourge, obviously. And the Mystic, you should try to stop this as much as you can, especially on Fort. You know, if you're doing a high Fort, War Scourge is buffing the Mystic also. The Mystic can actually start to one-shot or close to one-shot somebody. So stop this with your stops, AoE stops. Whatever kicks you have left, Hodges, you know, in your case, Para, so on. And then, of course, you get a cage. You go up here. That's a standard pool that I play in the video, so I won't mention this, but so is this. But you do have to get a 5th cage. As far as I know, this is the best pool to do that. That being said, I'm not sure of that. You just have to get a cage somewhere, but I'll talk about this pool quick. It's actually not as easy as it looks. This is like a... So you need someone to get the important kick on Decay Speaker, someone to get the War Scourge kick, and then you have double Mystic here. So, especially on Fort, this has a chance of comboing someone. Make sure that you have your targeted nameplates on, especially if someone sees double of this on them. They should defensive if they believe it's not going to be stopped. But yeah, you want to make sure that one person is assigned to each of these kicks, and then one to... Or stop as many of these with AoE stops as you can. Similar to the previous pool. The previous pool's pretty much exactly the same. So it's pretty much the same pool. And if this is padding away, depending on how worried you are about time and efficiency, if you want to play it safe, you can let it pat slower towards you while you damage a Mystic a bit and then put it in. Alternatively, you get it quick, someone will have to kick the Decay Speaker to make it come closer. But the third option is you don't even play these. If they're patting away, you just play this, kill them quick, and get the cage before they pat back. Just be wary of that because the timing is quite. You know, if they start to come up here, then you have to wait a bit for them to pat away. So, and these mobs help the pool because they make it not give 15 count. You know, triples the amount of count the pool gives. So this is why, like, if you are running a route like this, then you should probably pull these in. Do not pull these though. You know, the third Mystic is too dangerous for the amount of count it gives. Now, as for this pack here, in the video we didn't play it on boss, but typically after totem guy dies, you can pull this onto boss. You just have to make sure you stop and get a kick. But if you're struggling on this boss already, which a lot of groups do because you're not properly using cooldowns, then you do not want to... You don't want to increase volatility. Instead, you want to just make sure it's a nice, smooth boss. Just do it separate. Do it separate. Don't risk it if you don't like fucking 13 with the boys. I doubt damage is going to be so much of an issue that you have to do this on... Or, you know, time that you have to do this on boss. Now, because there's more count in the first area, we'll just quickly talk about the second area. The difference from my standard route is that I usually pull this shit here. So the blob and all this shit. So on this, you just do this in one pull, and then you pull... You can either chain these into the tree as all this is dying, or you can chain these up the hill. If you chain these into the tree, you kill these, you make sure that you're skipping the Rotsinger. Basically, the idea is you want to play as little Rotsingers as possible. So on my route, I tend to play one, which is this one here. Now, after you do this, you sneak past here, you take the tree up here. Now, if you're doing this route where you're not playing this blob and these trees, then I think it's fine to get this second tree. And you can do this easily just by pulling one of these, because it's connected. These mobs here are connected to this tree. So you pull this, you play it here. The healer will have to heal a decent amount here, but it is not so much that it's unbearable, especially on Tyrant. Then after this, you play Rotsinger into the trees. Now, if you want more space up here, you can wait till the Rotsinger drops the first totem, and then you move up. Because with totems, you want to outrange this. You do not want to you don't want to kill the totem. You want to outrange. It's about, I think it's 30 or 25 yards. Let's find out exactly. Within 0 yards. Okay, thank you, MDT. Very useful. Now, you can also chain these and play less. You know, you can chain these onto the boss or into the trees and play less in the end. Whatever. There's a lot of flexibility in the route. You know, all the trash is quite easy in here, other than the first area. That's why Priest is so good here, because this trash is just very inefficient relative to the rest in the dungeon. Anyways, I'll go to the actual video now, but I just wanted to talk about not having a priest briefly. And in the route, in the real run, I do have a priest, and the route looks a little bit more like this, you know, because we are doing this pack, but we are not. Oh, one last thing. Yes, I did have to start the video back up, but one last thing. As for talents in Brackenhide, basically, as far as I'm concerned, diffuse magic is not so useful in here. You should just run Eulons. Don't worry about running diffuse magic. I could be wrong about this. Someone can tell me otherwise, but diffuse magic definitely good. Also, Dance of the Wind, Dampen, maybe personal preference in this key. You know, my philosophy with Dampen is that I typically take it when I believe that it's necessary to survive something, and that's more common on Tyrant. But I don't think it's necessary in this key. I just forgot to change talents. So I would usually run Eulons and probably Dance of the Wind, but I forgot to change talents. The rest of the talents are pretty standard. As you can see, I am running Dampen and Diffuse, which I just said on that I would not run in this key. This is simply because I forgot to change talents. Now, this pool, basically you want to kind of get a little bit of initial threat on this, and then chain the pat, and chain that patting Rot Cruncher or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't know what it's called, but I'm about to chain it. This. Yeah, Bone Crusher. What the fuck did I just call it? Typically, your main things to watch out for in this pool, you really don't want to be the person kicking as the tank. I mean, maybe that's a complete load of horseshit, but I just let some of my melees kick, and then I, you know, I focus on dealing with mobs like running away, as you can see there, and try to make sure that nothing ninja pulls. Now, you do want to make sure that you don't tank too close to the hunter, especially if your intention is to not ninja pull. Now, Sanguine is obviously a pain in the ass in this area, which again is going to exacerbate your problems if you don't have a priest. You know, you're running more and more of these fucking stupid running mobs in Sanguine. Just such a headache. But just remember when you're doing this dungeon, deep breaths. The timer in this key is usually pretty lenient, so if the mob heals a bit from Sanguine, it's not going to end the run. It's important to just stay calm. But yeah, if you watched the previous video, you would have played that pack to the left there. That's the one I talked about in that little intro. But in this case, I'm putting War Scourge into the Hunter pack. The big threat here is the Hunter Trap, the Hunter itself, the Mystic Cast as it's buffed by the War Scourge, and also the War Scourge kick. Of course, you should also be very cautious of the Frenzy, what is it called? The thing that those little shits do. You have to stun this. You have to stun this. You know, try to AoE stop as many of you can. If you see some going off and you don't think your team's doing it, you can power some. Outside of that, their fate is not in your hands anymore if your CCs are down. Now, if you are pugging and you're not in comms, you just have to try to take the philosophy of, you know, trying to minimize the probability of someone or of your teammates dying. Because you're not coordinated, it's hard to make sure that each of these is getting stopped. So stop what you can. If they're going off, then there's not that much you can do about it. I mean, trying to type in the chat, probably not so good. So maybe you can ping danger. But in this next pool, it's going to be particularly tricky in a pug. Maybe before you start, you should communicate, hey, this guy gets the important kick on Decay Speaker every time, which is a Withering, and this guy gets the War Scourge every time. and the rest of us should try to stop as many mystics as possible. As you can see, my targeted spells weak aura is not working at the moment. So I've got this other stupid fucking LVI thing on. It's not really that effective. But typically you want to be using the targeted spells weak aura, so you see what cast is going on who. Then you might be able to identify whether someone's in danger or not, if you're not in comms. Even if you are in comms, you know, and then you can take initiative to try and stop someone from dying. In this case, if anyone knows, by the way, why my weak aura may not be working, I've tried a few different ones now. Let me know in the comments or via personal message, that would be wonderful. I'm a bit of a stupid cunt when it comes to weak auras. Now, where that Bone Crusher is going, that's that pack I talked about in the recent, what do you call it? The fucking... Oh, the intro. The intro. And I did say you could play this pack on pulling on boss. I decided not to in this case because of Sanguine. I would typically not have an issue playing with this on boss otherwise, but I just didn't want to deal with the Sanguine headache, and I knew that my group had enough damage that 17 would not be so tight that I would have to take this risk with Sanguine. And, you know, maybe I am a little bit too conservative with this. But if I tried 18 this week, I would probably play this on boss, because you'll see at the end of this video that the time actually ended up being quite tight. So if I'm playing 18, I'm going to have to make up time somewhere, and this would be one way to do that, either playing this on boss or playing it with the double mystic pack. But I think playing it on boss is going to be safer, because if you play this on the double mystic pack, that's another 15% buff to the mystic bolts, and the probability of someone getting one shot has become much higher. And also you have to assign a kick to the fear, so it's a double whammy. Okay, this boss. One thing I see in pugs all the time is they kick the heel. Actually, I would even say that the pugs will choose to kick the heel over anything else. Now, what most actual groups do, they just let the heel go off. It doesn't really do anything. It's not so much of a concern, really. So on this boss, there's a few different things. If you have an S-Priest, you know, in this case I don't have an S-Priest, my priest is holy. If you have an S-Priest, this boss is very much simplified as tank, because they can just mass dispel when you get totemed. But if you don't have an S-Priest, your DPS have to switch quick. You have to keep an eye on the charge and make sure that, you know, when this charge is about to go off, that you have a defensive up. On this key level, it would one-shot me if I did not use something. I don't know what level key starts to one-shot, but it does one-shot. You can, in theory, Zen Med this, but it's quite risky to do, so I would advise not relying on Zen Med as a defensive against this particular spell. Basically, you have to time the Zen Med just as it's going off. So if you fuck it up, you just get one shot, and you really don't want to waste your cheat death like this. Now, if you're running cheat death. If you're not, then, well, you don't want to just die because you're relying on Zen Med. You've got plenty of tools, otherwise this boss is not threatening to you. Now, you did see the warrior died there. He died because he got hit by the frontal. That's one thing you have to keep in mind on this boss, is that there is a frontal. So position yourself to try to prevent this from killing you, but from killing your teammates. I'm not sure if in this particular case it was my fault or his, but just be wary of this. If you do see someone stacking on you, the best thing you can do, because you don't want to like swing the boss and make the frontal turn a different way. So the best thing you can do to this is kind of S-key, go backwards, because you're not making it so the frontal can hit another target, but you're also trying to, you know, subtly position him behind the boss. Now, yeah, make sure you try to kick as many earth bolts as you can. If you're in a pug, again, the same pug philosophy, and I'm going to make a video specifically about this at some point, about how you change your gameplay based on no communication. And if you're in the pug, try to kick, or save your kick for when Gash Frenzy is going off and you believe someone will die to the kick. Of course, you'll be able to fit some kicks in between them, Same philosophy applies. Try to hold the kick for when you believe that the next cast will kill somebody. That way, look, it's a pain in the ass for the healer to have to heal the fucking thing. And of course, you could coordinate your kicks. You could go, well, here's the order for the kicks. But let's be honest, we've all pugged. We all know that's not going to fucking work. Anything, as you know, what's actually going to happen is there's going to be 3 or 4 kicks in the group, and 2 of them are going to kick the heel. They're going to panic kick the heel, and then no one's going to kick Earthball. I mean, this is like bread and butter. This is the pug way. So we just have to accept that, hey, the pugs are going to kick like this, and we have to try and minimize the probability that someone dies to Earthbolt. You can also throw some Vivifiers to help with the Gash Friends if you feel like it's necessary. I don't think you should do this, but maybe in a pug this might actually make the difference to try and help get someone over 90%. So I'm not sure what the priest died to there. I think it was a quadruple bleed from the trees, and that's one thing that you have to keep in mind in this area, is that this area is one of the easiest areas to live as a tank in the game. So naturally you might get a little bit carried away with the pool size, especially if you've watched a little bit of Equinox or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, Equinox pulled this, I'm going to pull this. But you have to keep in mind that, no offense to your homies that you play, your 13s with on a Friday night, but the teammates that which Equinox has are much more switched on to this kind of stuff. So you have to kind of pull accordingly. I would suggest, like, I usually pull larger than this, but because the priest died and we didn't want to use a B-res, actually I don't think we had a B-res till the end, we decided, okay, we'll just kill the oak and then we'll res. Now, in hindsight, maybe he should have ran back. This took so long that running back might have actually been correct. But yeah, I just decided at the time, played safe, I will not chain. And then maybe I'll chain the next 2 into the tree and go up the hill. But yeah, typically I would have chained those trees over there, and you want these to die at the similar time as the big fat tree. Instead, and again, sometimes you do, in keys, it's important to just take your medicine. Acknowledge that, hey, there's a problem that needs to be, something has changed. Don't just stubbornly follow your route and then, oh, well, that's the route, And as you can see, I improvised and I pulled this up to this pack. And usually I'd pull the top, but I think I held off for now because I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to get carried away with pool size here because of the reasons that I had previously mentioned. That you don't want to put too much pressure on your healer. The more of these little trees are spawning, and there's multiple mobs that actually spawn these, the worse off. And the ooze also puts out a dot. There's a lot of damage happening on the party here. So you do have to find a balance between the healer being able to heal and, wanting to maximize your AoE. Obviously, this dungeon, it's very tempting to do massive pulls, right? Because, well, it's a very easy, as you can see, I'm pretty much exclusively riding high stagger here. And that's because the nature of damage that these mobs do is not particularly threatening to me, even at high stagger. I might be able to explain that more in a video at some point, because there is different kind of scenarios in which your stagger is high, some in which you're at a very high risk of dying, and then others because of how smooth the damage intake is and how much magic damage is in the pack and factors like this. Now, of course, these Wilter dogs love to AFK and Sanguine, so try your best to deal with this, but if they sit in Sanguine, so be it. Just fucking deal with it and move on with your life. That's the thing. When obviously you have to keep in mind, hey, it's possible that this will die. I mean, this will get healed by Sanguine, but it's important that if it does, you don't kick yourself too hard. Just fucking accept, and this applies to everything in M+. You accept the new set of conditions going forward. So, hey, okay, I fucked up. How do we fix it from here? Not, hey, I fucked up. Let's groan and moan in the comms until the world somehow fucking fixes the problem for me. Now, as you can see, we're outranging the totem. The totem is completely ineffective damage. So the obvious thing is to outrange the totem. You should, you could argue that you'd want to focus the oak here, but most groups, you're going to be better off just focusing the Rotsinger. because you want to just deal with that so you don't have to keep dancing around totems. And it also does another spell, I forget what it's called, I think it's kickable. But and yeah, a few tips here, because there is a route that goes out. You might want to save your Tigers last within reason, in case this happens. If not, call for a freedom or something. Also, in terms of kicks, I don't think I've kicked yet, this whole fucking thing. And that's partially because, well, because I'm shit. But also, because the kicks here are not that meaningful. They're not wide, you know, the root one is probably the best one to fucking deal with. But I'm not sitting there going, oh fuck, we missed a kick. But you should be kicking. I'm not saying that, you know, it is definitely a complacent or a laziness on my part. I do not intentionally think, oh fuck yeah, I'm not kicking anything. There's nothing to kick. It's more so just me being shit. Now, again, you want to be cautious here. I mean, this is a lot, on Fortified especially, double oak, uncoordinated group, this is a lot of damage. Because there's so many lashes consistently, each lash will put a bleed out. If too many of these bleeds go on the same player, it's very likely that they will need to use the defensive, or they'll die, or the healer will just have to spam the shit out of them. Now, of course, you could pull some of this stuff onto boss. This boss is very straightforward, but you don't want to... I mean, again, you have to weigh it up. Okay, so the way I always think about things, and of course it's a little bit wimpy at times, is probability of success and how much time saved. Like there's kind of a ratio of time saved to volatility and how likely it is that something will go wrong because of this. And that is why, in the case of Sanguine, it has swayed me to not pull these onto boss. I think if it was not Sanguine, I probably would on Tyrant. Now, again, we just kind of take it slow. And of course, I think looking back, I probably was too conservative because the timer ended up being quite close in the end. And you don't really want to create a scenario where your timer is that close. But yeah, you do have to think about everything in terms of probability of success. Or, you know, try to visualize, okay, what are the wipe conditions if you do this or you do that? That's how I try to think about it. So let's say, for example, you decide to pull Stink Breath onto the boss, which is reasonably common. People do this. It's very easy for something to go wrong quickly, and you have to keep in mind that because there's also other decent mobs that are around Stink Breath, it makes a lot more sense to play Stink Breath after the boss, especially in an uncoordinated or shitty group. Which, unless you know your top level, like even our group has a lot of flaws, and yeah, most groups do. Again, you want to just kind of simplify things. We're not so tight on timer that we have to. And because I think, okay, the probability of Stink Breath hitting someone on this boss is probably higher than 10%. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out my arse here, but it's quite high. I might as well just play it with the next thing. And of course, the graveyard will unlock after about 15 seconds after we kill this boss. So if someone does die, or does die to Stink Breath for some reason, then they will be able to release and come back. Whereas on the boss, you would have to waste a B-res or waste a lot of time. Now, in this case, we use the Rogue Cloak on the first one to make sure we don't have to damage the shield. Then we are going to use the Paladin one on the second one. Make sure that you're stopping as many of these AoEs as possible. Again, if you're in the Comsless Pug, then you want to wait until the kind of last second to... Well, you've got two schools of thought. One is to wait till the last second, see if someone else stops them first, or the other is to do it instantly so no one else wastes. So it's up to you, really, which approach you want to take. But either of those is fine. And you just want to start... And if you don't have an AoE stop, and it doesn't look like, just stop as many as you can. So you power one, maybe kick another, so on and so forth. And then that way, if the other two do go off, perhaps it's not a wipe. Instead, you know, you're dealing with a lot of damage going out to the group, but it's not no one dies. Well, it's very unlikely someone died to that. Now, if you do have to soak this, you can channel Zermed for the whole duration. I don't think it's necessary. Obviously, you know, we all struggle with the whole idea of getting value out of Zermed. But, like, because you're losing damage, and this is really, you're never going to die to this. I'm doing Zemad as a joke here, but I don't think this is a good Zemad, because unless you feel like you're going to die for some reason, like you've taken this when you already have a stack or something. But other than that, channeling a full Zemad, you're just wasting damage globals and wasting time. You've got plenty of juice to deal with this. Now, if the boss is like 15% or so, and you don't have, or you don't want to, and I just cheat death there because I was stupid. I basically just stood right in the green swirly. But if you're, especially on Fort, if the boss is quite low on HP, you can just let the thing go off. As Brew, you should not die to this. And, you can outrange the boss's melees if you're worried that you may die to it, which is completely fine, especially if your cheat death's off CD, or you're not running cheat death. But yeah, maybe just using a light CD and taking the boss, you should not die to this. Like, it just increases his melees by a decent amount, mind you, but it's not enough to kill a Brew typically. On 17 Tyrant, I don't experience it here because we end up just soaking it, but I'd imagine that it would start to hurt quite a bit. And I think that's why we end up soaking, because I said in the comms that I didn't want to risk tanking this without cheat death off cooldown. So we just soak it, safe, better safe than sorry a lot of the time. And that's, again, it goes back to my philosophy of, and if you're watching this video, you're probably in a similar kind of key level or lower. It's always better to be safe than sorry. You have to, if you're seeing like Equinox or Yurt or something do some sort of a thing, some sort of micro efficiency thing, this is, in this case, well, just remember that their group is going to be much better at executing niche little setups or mechanics. So if you believe that your group can execute something, go ahead, but let's say, hypothetically, the skip, whatever the skip or mechanic is, saves 20 seconds. And if you fuck it up, it depletes the key, and you believe there's like a higher than 10% chance of fucking it up, it's probably not worth doing. It's probably not worth doing without some sort of contingency to make sure the key doesn't deplete if it goes wrong. But you have to be a little bit more selective than these boys with your time saves, because for one, they're not as necessary, but also your group on average is definitely going to be less skilled and less practiced. I mean, some of these guys play a lot, and they are quite good at the game. I don't want to discourage you from trying cool tricks. I'm just saying that one of the things, especially if you're playing off meta like Brew, you have to try and keep people happy as well, and depleting because you want to try some cool thing that Equinox did, that's going to save you guys a very marginal amount of time. Probably not a good look. You don't want to deplete keys, because this will, even if it's not the fact that you're running Brew, you got to remember, as off meta, people will commonly, it's an easy excuse. It's an easy way to categorize a deplete. So, these kind of social dynamics are important if you are worrying about your long-term, prospects in WoW, especially if you're chasing title or some sort of substantial goal. Now, this fight, use your rings, use your stuns, get them into the roots. Remember that when they are rooted, they can still bite. So if you're in comms, tell your DPS to fucking back off from them if they're getting a little bit too cozy with the hyenas. Now, you can dodge Force Gutshot. I fucked it up a decent amount here, I think, but just, dodge Force Gutshot similar to Black Recorder. You can Blackout Kick, whatever. If you're really desperate, you can turn your back to him or the hyenas, and I don't think that's worth it, though. Now, other than that, just pick up Fred on the new hyenas. Good trap placements, whatever. It's not rocket science, this boss. I will quickly take the time to talk about what I believe comps are going to be, or what a good brew comp would be this season. And keep in mind, early days, I really haven't tried that much because I don't know enough of certain specs. So I tend to know a lot of rep values for some reason, which is fine. I Again, sometimes you just have to take what you can get. It's better to play than not play. But yeah, I think that ultimately S-Priest, even with Brew, S-Priest is too strong at the moment. So ideally, I believe that your best outcomes will come if you can somehow convince a S-Priest to play with you. You can fill the other slots however you want. You can either decide, okay, well, we'll go full fucking spell cleave, which I would suggest, even though it's a controversial opinion, I would suggest that's a little bit selfish because you are in a position in which you're the fucking weak link of a comp. Your net, even if Brew's damage potential is higher, the net damage, if you're running like S-Priest, Mage, Org, or something like this, is not going to be higher with Brew. Because the capabilities of Venge are just much greater in this particular setup. So I think that, you know, to absolutely maximize your possibilities as Brew. Now again, this is just a guess. I don't know anything for sure. You have to think about two things. One is the strength of the comp, but also the probability or the keeping people happy. Rogues are also a little bit off meta now. So Rogue pairs well with Brew, it gets buffed by Brew, so on and so forth. So I think you'd be very well off going with a Rogue. So if you run something like Rogue, Warrior, S-Priest, and then Resto Druid. Resto Druid is by far the best choice as a healer for Brew. This is this is... I am very confident about this. I play with Light Priest because he is a long-term healer of mine and I have a lot of faith in his capabilities. But yes, you're going to get better outcomes with a Resto Druid. Almost guaranteed. Now, I would say that, again, just like that shit I talked about earlier, it's better that you accept. Sometimes you might not be able to run the optimal comp because ultimately it's about consistency. You don't want to try to get optimal comp and then you just end up having to change people every fucking week, or you're constantly lacking people because you've been so obsessed with getting R-Druid, S-Priest, Org, something for your fucking 13 brackenhide. You know what I mean? Just play with people that are going to show up and your outcomes are going to be better unless your comp really stinks. Now, yeah, I know I tend to carry on a bit, so just make sure you're dispelling. Don't pull too many rod hexes relative to your dispel amount. Typically, you want to skip these field callers with Mindsoothe or Shroud or something. They're not very good. They've got dangerous aspects and they give fuck all count. But I pulled them here because I pulled one of these rod hexes in late. But yeah, and making sure that you don't pull too many rod hexes that you can't actually dispel with your composition. Of course, you can use the Cauldron, but if you don't have access to the Cauldron, or you're skipping this War Scourge that is in front of the Cauldron, then yeah, just make sure that your dispels match the amount. Now, I'll make sure to end that point on Brew comps. So yeah, an S-Priest, if you can get hold on one, it's going to be super good. S-Priest is just insane this patch for a variety of reasons. And like, you may end up with a comp that still doesn't have Lust with the S-Priest, and of course that's going to reduce S-Priest overall, S-Priest outcomes, whatever. But in this case, we are talking about maximizing the Brew's prospects. I'm almost certain that any S-Priest could do better with let's say, all things equal, with an equivalent skilled comp. Equivalent skilled players with the optimal comp, which is Venge. That's probably a key level for them. So you're going to have to offer, if you want an S-Priest to, or any kind of class that matches significantly better with Venge or other specs, you're going to have to convince them somehow. Keep them happy somehow. If you have to suck a few, then, well, that's the off-meta life, isn't it? But, yeah. Don't get carried away pulling too much of this shit. Help with the dispels. Watch the filth cores. These casts, especially the swirlies, if you get hit by the swirly, that will one-shot you. These little biters, they are very dangerous. They do a lot of damage. So just as you watch this, I come in and I don't follow my own fucking advice. I come in here with no defensive up and I get fucking shafted off the bat. I'm already up to 250% stagger. I'm like, please heal me. Please heal me. I've got no bruise. I'll probably spam the living shit out of it out of panic. And I do stabilize, but what I should have done probably in this situation, especially with this fort, is I should have distanced myself completely from the mobs. I wasn't too worried because I had cheat death off CD. But especially if you have cheat death, don't randomly die because you're macho, man. That's the best, one of the best tanking advices. Like you might be, I've got Celestial's coming up soon, whatever. You're on 250% stagger, and you've got no defensive up, and you have no purifiers. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. No one cares if you can survive. Again, it goes back to probability. Think about things in probability. It'll, for the most part, increase your key outcomes. Now, this boss, I didn't want to pull this war squad, I was worried about time. So this is like last resort type thing because the war squad also puts the bosses CDs out sync because it reduces the CDs. So you'll see the way things overlap here is kind of weird. But basically, because we only had only slightly over 5 minutes, and this boss is quite long on Tyrant, I wanted to make sure that we didn't, we didn't lose the time or lose to the timer because I didn't want to chain a war squad onto boss, which in a coordinated group is really not that threatening. But yeah, I'd only do that if you actually really had to, which we did. Now, as for if you're not in comms, a totem or two is probably going to go off. But save your Todd for when it looks like, hey, this one's really not going to die. If you're... And, this happens even in coordinate. Like, sometimes Todd will be the cooldown that you guys dedicate to a certain totem. I think in this case it ended up taking me a long time to use Todd because we have such a good comp in this case for dealing with totems. But I think that, Todd is a very useful tool, and you can pair with 4-brew. You're not so desperate to get value out of your 4-brew on this boss, I promise you. If you're playing fundamentally decently, otherwise. Now, that's probably not necessary, but if you're feeling really panicked. But yeah, another thing is, on Tyrant especially, save your polearm for a totem as well. So this polearm is actually quite strong. It does a lot of ST damage. This is another way or another cooldown that your group can use to do a totem. Now, there is cases, let's say hypothetically you're doing fucking this, but you have a comp that's much worse at killing totems. You could, because Bracken is quite... Well, it's not easy to tank, but it's one of the easier keys. You could tame your pool size in Section 2 slightly, play an offensive trinket instead, such as Beacon or Grief Torch, to make sure that your group has another way of dealing with totems if you have a group that's shit at dealing totem damage. And you believe that the main thing that is going to wipe your group is the totem. You could also trade up your Chief Depth for this. Now, I might make a video at some point talking about cheat def versus non-cheat def, or double. There's a few trinket options that you can have this tier. One is one defensive and one offensive, such as Grief Torch, Beacon, Boon, whatever. I would suggest, and this is my opinion, it's not necessarily correct or incorrect, but I suggest if you're doing keys that are progress for you, you never run an offensive trinket unless it's deemed necessary. For example, you can't kill totems, like an example I just mentioned. Otherwise, you're going to always be better off running double defensive, whether that's defensive cheat def or defensive. So like Tree Mouse Fire Axe, Knockout Fire Axe, whatever. Now, I am a big fan of cheat def. I know that other high monks and these monks are better than me at the game. Are choosing that in a lot of cases to run double defensive instead. Now, my philosophy on this is that you should run cheat def, especially at the level of key that you're likely to be doing if you're watching this video, because the probability of you depleting because you just randomly die is higher than the, you know, or you running out defensives. If anything, you probably don't use your defensives enough as it is. Like that's, you know, if you're watching low tank, I'm not suggesting everyone is low or shit a brew or anything like this, but if you're watching gameplay footage, what ends up happening is you end up seeing, and you can suggest this in my footage as well. When I review my own footage, I tend to notice that I'm not using defenses as much as I could. So I think cheat def overall is going to be more useful to me than second defensive. That being said, if I deemed it necessary, which it may be in certain high keys, like let's say a high Azure Vault, and you don't have a way, like you don't have a worry to reflect first boss, you might want to use double defensive. It just gives you another option. But of course, cheat def can act as a pseudo defensive. You know, of course it has a 8-minute cooldown, but it can also enable you to use other defensives, you know, in riskier ways, because you know, okay, at least I have cheat def as a backup. So you're like, okay, maybe Celestial doesn't save me here, but I have cheat def as a backup, and I don't want to overuse. So you use Celestial, let's say on a Dragon Strike, and if you do cheat def, so be it. That's what it's there for. Anyways, I know I rambled and ranted a lot in this video, but thank you for watching, and there will be more content coming soon. And yes, I did do this in one take, so it's very, I don't know, there's probably a few R's and Ums and whatever, but check out the Twitch, boys. I'll be streaming more often. Thank you again for watching.